My name is Jacek Bartosiak. Welcome to Strategy&Future.
Hello everyone, my name is Świdziński. I'm the Director of Analysis at Strategy&Future, and welcome to another of our podcasts. This one will concern the air-sea battle concept. We envisage those to be divided into a couple parts, and we also would like to present a report which is already in the making, largely finished, and that will be published soon as well. So with me today is Jacek Bartosiak, the CEO and founder of Strategy&Future. Thank you for being here with us today, Jacek.
Hi, thank you for having this conversation and an important debate about the air-sea battle concept that is sort of a founding stone in the American strategy of keeping the primacy.
So let me just set the tone here. We are in the New York City. We have a view overlooking the Ellis Island, Staten Island, and the Statue of Liberty. We're passing by the USS Intrepid today. So I think this is a great setting to have this debate about this very important tool of the US power.
Yeah, it's a very good place to have this conversation also for the reason that the United States has been the ocean, the sea power connecting to Eurasia across both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And in the 20th century, it was mainly the Atlantic that was this connectivity place, with the place where the United States projected power into Eurasia. Of course, in the Second World War, it was also the Pacific theater. But increasingly in the 21st century, it will be the Western Pacific that will be a pivotal place where the U.S. interests will clash with the Chinese interests. And also the power and wealth of New York City stemmed from the fact that the United States controls the maritime lines of communication, where it could trade and impose its leverage, impose its will, create alliances, be present in the political life of Eurasia. And over the last 15 years, it became increasingly important to make sure that the United States Navy still can freely project power into the Western Pacific. And given the rise of China and the Chinese military concept of anti-accessory denial capabilities that are projected to phase out, to remove this freedom of operation of the US Navy and actually armed forces into their own backyard in the littoral waters of the Western Pacific, it became increasingly contested and uncertain whether the United States forces would really, in crisis or in kinetic war, could project power and reassure allies in the Western Pacific, keep that means keep their security in place, and that already taxed the U.S. primacy in the Western Pacific.
And this is of course important because the US strategy stands upon the alliance network that it has in the Western Pacific. So any threat that the US cannot deliver is of great importance and
very much so. And the Chinese anti-accessory denial capabilities, meaning submarines, mining warfare, but mostly missiles and aircraft that take off from the coast, can really cut the lines of operation of the American Navy and impose costs that are prohibitive and will actually remove the Navy and its vessels from the Western Pacific. And the South China Sea, the West China and East China Sea are the places where the strategic flows traverse. So who controls those areas, those bodies of water, will have the ultimate power in the international affairs, especially in the increasingly visible great power competition in Eurasia, where geopolitics is back in the game, and who controls the places and the corridors, crossroads where strategic flows traverse, is lord of the day. Yeah, and the United States Navy is facing a huge dilemma, huge problems. on many fronts, because it was actually decapitalized. The long war in the Great Middle East taxed the U.S. forces, sequester, a political debate in D.C., of course the Russian threat in Europe, where the theater is different. It's continental, it's land oriented warfare. It's a army, not navy. It's short range, and in the Western Pacific, it's a long range assets. And the Chinese, as this is their backyard, they design the forces and sort of shape them just to address the operational challenges that are present there. And the air sea battle concept that has been designed over the last 10 years in the Pentagon was supposed to create the situation and conditions that the United States Navy could again freely operate within this contested environment.
So you give this analogy, you came up with this analogy that the bar analogy, essentially, where the US is being kicked out actively from the bar being the South China Sea, by the Chinese via their A2AD measures, which are deployed on the artificially built islands or enforced islands. And the air sea battle concept is supposed to be a way to get back into the game, get back into the bar.
Yeah, air sea battle concept is one of the operational concepts that Americans devised after the Second World War. One being a famous air-land battle concept in the 70s and 80s, and going forward into the 90s in Mesopotamia. There is now a multi-domain battle in European landlocked peninsula, in the land warfare facing Russia, and there is air sea battle concept in the Western Pacific, like War Plan Orange prior to the Second World War. That was envisaged to be a good tool to confront Imperial Japan. So the air sea battle concept was quite a detailed plan how to tackle this new challenge. But still, the problems remained. First problem that Americans faced, and I think it was the first time since the end of the Second World War, was that the American way of war was about having sanctuaries. So critical allies like Saudi Arabia or Germany or Australia that could base your troops and from which you could project power freely with impunity. Remember the case of both Gulf Wars and Saudi Arabia. So American forces simply were assembling there, steadily, slowly, and nobody confronted it, and they could, over the strategic line of communication across the oceans, they could be deployed there. Nobody was shooting on them. And then when they decided, at the time of their choosing, they
delivered the strike.
They struck. And now it's not going to be the case. Both Russian, to a lesser extent, and to a greater extent, the Chinese capabilities of anti-exterior denial, that's the acronym that the Americans are using, make it impossible. There will be no sanctuaries. Japan will be fired upon. South Korea will be shot at. Taiwan will be shot at.
Even Guam.
Even Northern Australia. And Guam, of course, the main hub, the main operating base in the Western Pacific. Who knows about Hawaii in the longer run? And the Chinese are going to shoot both with aircraft, but most importantly with missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. And that complicates the American planning. It will not come with impunity. And if it doesn't come with impunity, then it means it's going to cost in blood and in treasure. And if it costs in blood and in treasure, that raises the threshold of confronting this situation.
And that in turn is well understood by allies, which do those calculations as well.
Not only understood, but closely monitored. And stemming from that, the U.S. resolve is being checked every day, daily, because the credibility of the United States is resting upon the capability to project power and the will to do so. So the Chinese strategies of anti-exterior denial are testing both, probing both those elements. and the Allies are watching. That's why Americans had to devise something that would kick the door to the bar open again, so that they could show that they are the biggest guy in the block, in the neighborhood, and they could get into the bar whenever they want. The problem is that we are not sure if it's still the case. In the following episodes of the Cersei Battle Concept podcast, we'll be discussing in detail what the war would look like in the Western Pacific. For Australia, for Japan, what about bases, about submarine warfare, air warfare, what about space over Taiwan, about outer space. So we will talk in depth about the modern scouting battle. So I just can't wait to sort of warm up and unleash all those detailed analysis that we have made here at Strategy&Future. I can only tease you that the report already, and it's not finished yet, is 90 pages long and is describing how the war between the United States and China would unfold.
So there is a lot more where that came from. This was just the very introductory podcast. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for listening to us, and please visit our webpage at strategyandfuture.org. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.